Thank you for having me. Why don't we first make sure you have all the materials that we need. Did everyone get the handouts up here? Okay, all right. We are the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities. We are a parent training and information center. Federal law requires that there is one in every state, and our main purpose is to provide information to families and agencies, schools that have children with disabilities, and to get that information out. And we do that in a variety of ways. So each of you should have received a handout here that talks a little bit more about what we do and who we are. We also have a form here that shows some of the trainings that we provide. So we provide information through trainings like today. We also have regional trainings where we'll bring nationally known speakers in our regions to provide information for schools and families. We also provide publications. The blue sheet is a list of the publications that we provide. They're free of charge for families, but there is a charge for professionals because the main focus of our grant money is to go towards families. Each of you should have received a registration form and an evaluation form. If you could fill that out for me, that would be very helpful. We'll do the evaluation forms at the end of the training, but we'll do the registration forms right now. And on the top, you'll see it says trainer. Just put Sandy in there, that's fine. Training, autism, and we're in Van Wert County today. Yes. And today is the 12th. 12/12/12. Wow. And then there's quite an array of materials for the actual training, the autism training here too. Evaluation forms and share your thoughts on the training. One of the requirements to have this position is to have a child with a disability. My husband Doug and I have 5 sons, and I would say to people years ago when all 5 were living with us, if you flew overhead and you saw a brown pulsating roof, you would know it was ours from all the testosterone pumping through the house. But they're all growing up. Our youngest will be 21 in February, and our oldest, well, I won't say how old our oldest is. He went around me, actually. He's older than me now. And we have 4 grandchildren. And so we've been through...
Boys?
We have two are boys, and we have twin granddaughters, actually. So, yes. So they're kind of evened up there. People would say, are you going to keep trying for a girl? Thinking, we never really started trying for a girl, but the girls will come. And you'd see, when I would say the girls will come, their eyes got really big, like, you're going to keep trying? No, they will come, and they are coming. We have 2 wonderful daughter-in-laws, girlfriends calling and coming, and basically one day the twins were over, and Emma, the one girlfriend, they said, do you live here? Because every time they're there, they see her there. So the girls are coming and are here. So 2 of our children have disabilities, dyslexia, ADHD, and written expression, so more of the learning disability type arena. So that's my personal experience with all of that. And prior to having my children, I was in education also. So kind of bringing the personal and professional piece all together. So, and we have all elementary teachers here today. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, great. All right. All right, so we are going to get started. You should all have your PowerPoints. Well, first of all, I want to say I am so excited to be able to come here. Actually, this is the second time I've been able to be in a private school. It was last month, I believe. I was in one of the other private schools and provided one of the other trainings, and we had school staff coming from all over the area, and it was very exciting to me, and it is very exciting for me today also to be able to be a part of your school and know that there is an option and an opportunity and choices for our families. And one of the first things I saw when I entered this room was this. Catholic schools, learning in a faith-filled environment. And it talks about service and justice and love and stewardship and peace. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, like all of our kids now have that opportunity to make that choice, their families do, to be included and be part of this. Because that hasn't always been the case. It was someone that I started working with. I know I'm Catholic. I know that's not something I usually say in a training, but it's part of the story that she and another person were kind of talking, and it was like, what's going on? Like, I'm Catholic, and you're kind of not liking Catholic. What's happening? And I just kind of let it go. I never said anything. But then later I heard her story. She had 2 children. Her daughter was the oldest, very typical, went to their she is Catholic, went to the Catholic school, very good experience, very positive experience. Her son had disabilities, cognitive disabilities, and she just assumed he was going to go to that Catholic school. But little did she know, he wasn't allowed to go to that school. They had told her that they weren't able to serve him, and that he just couldn't come. He wasn't accepted. And that really broke her heart. Her children had to go to 2 different schools, and she felt her family was broke up. And so that is where the negative piece came. And it made me very sad to hear that she had that experience, and how she's, you know, continued to carry that on with her. It made me look at it a little differently. I'd never really thought about that. My children, we live in a very rural area like this. We don't have the option of a Catholic school in our little community. We have to travel to a nearby town, which would take about 20-25 minutes to get to the school. But in our community, it was a very individual, unique situation where it's a public school. But when I grew up in that same school, we had sisters teaching. We either went to religion or to Mass every morning in a public building. I think it was very unique to our state. And then my son started experiencing that too, but then it was taken away shortly after they started their education. And I got to thinking about her experience. I chose not to send our children to travel that far. I wanted them to stay in their community with their other peers. But I thought, how would I have felt if, because my 2 children that have their disabilities, they would have had to gone to a different school other than their brothers. I can't imagine that feeling. And just knowing that now we have these opportunities for families to stay together, families to choose and know if it's important for them to have that Catholic education, they know they can have that Catholic education. So it is just, it really warms my heart to be able to be here and to come into the building. First thing I see when I come into the building are the Catholic symbols and things that the children are exposed to that I don't see when I, you know, on a daily basis as I go into the public schools. But it just gives that option. So I want to say thank you to all of you for that opportunity for the families. Because I know it isn't an easy thing, and it's a different thing, and different things, you know, new things, unknown things, can be very challenging. I thank you for your openness to that, and making a huge difference in families' lives, not just while they're at school, but then when they do go home. All right, so autism awareness. We're going to talk, this is like an overview of autism. We're going to talk about the different types of autism. We are going to talk about some of the characteristics, and then we're going to talk about some strategies that have been successful for people that have worked with children with autism. Okay, all right. It has been around for many years. Oh, thank you. Okay. It's been around for around 100 years. So we may not have talked about it a lot in the past, but we're continuing to talk about it more because it is much more prevalent. So in 1911, Bleuler first used the term autism. He kind of put it together with this group of symptoms of schizophrenia in children. They weren't really seeing the whole total picture at that time. And then in 1943, there were a couple of different people that were looking at things. Leo Kanner from Johns Hopkins used autism to describe a group of children that he was working with. and he used that term autism. And then we had Hans Asperger, who was from Germany, and he was identifying like another new little category, which later was known as Asperger's. In the 60s, then they started to say, okay, there's some differences here. Schizophrenia is over here and autism's over here. They're starting to see that there are two separate things. And then in the 70s and 60s, they were looking at different kinds of medications and treatments like LSD, electrical shock. They were looking at behavioral treatments and using punishment and pain as those behavioral treatments. That's all they knew at the time. And that, things continued to progress as the years went on. And then in the 80s and 90s, of course, the behavior therapy and those controlled learning environments started to take place. In 1991, autism was added then to that public law of IDEA as an actual disability category to look at. So it's been quite a progress in those things happening. In 2007, autism rate was 1 in 150, just 5 years ago. And we've continued to move on. In 2009, 1 in 110, and this year, 1 in 88. That is a huge change in 5 years' time. So it's a very prevalent piece. And New Jersey has the highest rate of autism in the nation, and 1 in 50 children are diagnosed with this disorder. Right. It's 5 times more prevalent in boys than girls. They're finding girls usually they're higher functioning if they're diagnosed with autism, and they're going to focus maybe more on like relationships. With autism sometimes they focus on different specific areas. Girls focus more on relational types of things, which I find to be very interesting compared to the boys, which might be focusing more on an item, a thing, or a topic type of thing. It affects all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic backgrounds. So we're all of our families are susceptible to this. If identical twins are born and one has autism, there's a 9 out of 10 chance that the other twin will also have autism. So it's, and if siblings, there's a 35% chance that another sibling may have autism. We've worked with families where they could have 4 children and all 4 children have autism. They might be in varying degrees and look a little different, but they have that diagnosis. Okay, so it's there's this umbrella of autism disorders. We're looking at varying different types of things here. And the CDC, they use some different terminology. The Psychiatric Association, they use other terminology. But in the end, the DSM-4, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, that's where we get, that's what they go by to make the diagnosis. And so we're looking at that autism spectrum disorder. And we're going to talk about the 5 different types of autism under that umbrella. Just a little bit of a piece of that. And so when we talk about it today, I'm just going to use that word autism to cover all of it. It will just to be understanding that that's, I'm just going to be using that terminology with that. All right, so the first one is that classic autism. This is the most severe form of autism. They may have problems with communicating, talking, relating to people. They're very hypersensitive to their sensory around them, the lights. Hearing this noise over here might be very distracting. So they're those heightened sensory pieces. Textures. They're going to cling to those rituals, or maybe eating certain specific things or not, specific things that they don't want to take part in. Changes in routine are going to be very upsetting to them. These are all just common things of classic autism. To diagnose autism, when we look at that DSM-4, there are 12 characteristics, and the child must have at least 6 of those characteristics to have that diagnosis. So 2 of them must be with social interactions where they're seeing those symptoms. There must be at least 1 also with communication needs, and then 1 with more the that focus on specific things, that type of piece. So that's the criteria, at least that many. They can definitely have more. They're probably going to have major learning difficulties also, and it will occur within the first 3 years of life. Asperger's syndrome, they are probably going to have above average or average intelligence. It's going to look a little different than the classic autism. They're going to have social and communication issues. It just may be a little different. They usually don't have language delays. They're communicating. It's more that social communication, but not communicating and speaking. They may lack empathy, not showing emotion. That engaging in conversation or starting conversation, or continuing conversation is going to be challenging for them. 22% of them, their IQs are going to be, at a superior range, and it's going to be areas that they have great gifts in. Many times we're not going to see those superior IQs because of the other things getting in the way. And really seeing, they're having that ability to show what they know. Sometimes they're going to have other dual diagnoses that go along with it. They may be highly intelligent, but they're having issues with reading, writing, and math, even though they're highly intelligent. And it's really getting that information out of there and expressing themselves, getting that going. Starting and stopping activities, planning and organizing their time, organizing themselves. Those are going to be big issues. And they look typical. Most of our students with autism, they look typical. Like, what's the big deal? Which reminds me of another lady and I, we worked together for a while. She had a child with Down syndrome, and she would complain that, people see my son with his disability and they don't have high expectations for him. And that was frustrating for her. And I would say, well, my son, he looks typical, and people think he should be exactly typical. But there are things going on. And so it's really just looking at what are the unique needs of this particular child. And it's the same with autism. They look typical, but what is really going on? When you've seen one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism. What are the characteristics that we're seeing for this particular child? And what can we do about that? The third one is childhood disintegrative disorder. This is where, that things start out, everything's fine, we think they're developing normally, and then boom, all of a sudden, we're seeing there's regression in, of course, those same different areas. And so that's socialization again, communication, those obsessive types of things, all those things are coming back. And so they're losing those social skills. They're losing that communication that they once had. This can be really frustrating, but that's a piece, and that's going to happen between the ages of 2 and 4 when we're going to start seeing that. Back to the child with autism, they are very literal. I don't know if you've had experiences with children with Asperger's, but they are very literal. And there's a story with Spencer. He is so cute. He's senior, going to graduate. He was sick one day, and they were taking final exams. So when he came back to school the next day, the teacher said, well, you can take your final exams tonight after school because you can't graduate unless you have your final exams. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he went home. Well, the principal later called the mom and said, he's not going to graduate, this is what happened. So she knew there's something going on here. I need to have a conversation with him. So they went out for a walk, nice, calm, casual walk, started talking about all kinds of, things that he'd be interested in. And finally she said, what's going on with not taking your finals? And he said, I don't take finals after school. I play Xbox and watch TV after school. That's his routine. I mean, that's just silly. Why would I be taking exams at that time? And besides, I've already been accepted out of college. I don't need to graduate. I don't need my diploma. So that's his way of thinking, in that literal thinking, not understanding those things or cause and effect. That's a huge piece for all those areas of autism, that not linking you know, what they've done, that cause, and then the effect that's going to be happening with that. So just getting to that understanding with them and having those conversations that's a big thing. They are more likely to be more aware of their differences compared to some other children with autism, and so depression can be a piece of that we need to be looking out for, because they know they're different, but they can't figure out why, or how can I make things that I'm not so different and I'm accepted by my peers and others in my community. The more they have social skills built in, the less the chance is of their having that depression. So the social skill building is a huge piece for these kids, for all the students, but most importantly for them, because they really know and have that awareness. I want to be like everyone else, but I'm not quite sure what's going on or how to be accepted and like everyone else. They need to know the why behind things. They don't have that cause and effect thing going, understanding, so they may, if they don't do well on a test, they could say, well, it's because I just have bad luck. I never do good on tests. Or my teacher doesn't like me. That's why I do bad on tests. They don't see the relationship between I need to study, I need to know the information, and all of that is you know, contingent on how I'm going to do on that test. So seeing the cause and effect. So those are things that they need to be taught and explained to them in those situational moments of that cause and effect, or creating moments to teach that skill. The fourth one is Rett syndrome. This is a neurological and developmental disorder that usually affects girls. So they're going to have poor verbal and social skills. Their head growth, about 5 months, you're going to see where their head growth is just not happening, and loss of muscle tone, you know, difficult to walk, eye contact, not making eye contact, those things, and probably having severe cognitive deficits along with that. They stop using their hands, or they could be like wringing their hands or hand washing, lots of excessive hand washing, a lot of things going on with their hands. And the last one is that pervasive developmental disorder, PDD, not otherwise specified, NOS. This is when a student does not meet the criteria of autism. You know, we talked about having 6 of the symptoms of the 12. Maybe they don't have quite all of, you know, that. They don't meet that. Or they may have those, but it's to a very less degree. So we can't really say they're classic autism. But we know there's a lot going on. That's part of that umbrella, you know, spreading out there, that there's still autistic-like tendency things that we're seeing here. So the social interaction, communication, those are all, those patterns of interest that they develop, all the same as the other pieces, just to a less degree. What causes autism? They have not come to any conclusion. No one can agree to what that the cause is yet. There is no cure for it. If a person has autism, they're going to have it for life. They just can develop skills to help them to be more successful in life. So they're still doing a lot of research in that, and to come up with where, you know, what they think might be happening here. But environmental things, genetic types of things, they're agreeing on those kinds of possibilities and looking more into that. Immunizations, that's very controversial, but those are still things that they're looking into. When a child has autism, there's a good chance that they may have some other type of diagnosis going right along with that. And these are some different types of diagnoses that you may see that comes right along with that. There are some red flags to look out for. So one thing that the researchers are agreeing on is that there are a number of genes that are interacting with like unidentified environmental types of things. So they haven't identified what those environmental things are, but they've come to that agreement. It's just what are those unidentified environmental factors. And some of the red flags to look for is that they're not having big smiles or joyful expressions by the age of 6 months. You know, babies are they're developing and they're showing those emotions and those expressions. If they haven't developed that, that's a red flag. Not, smiling or, back and forth sharing of sounds, ba, 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 trying to start that communication piece. That's not happening by 9 months. Gestures and pointing, those kinds of things, saying bye-bye by 12 months. Kind of red flags there, are babbling by 12 months. Failure to look at faces and eyes of others by 24 months. We start wondering, with that, or imitating by 24 months. Any age, if there is a loss of language and social skills, that's we need to have some concerns. If it's something that they've had and they're regressing, that's a big red flag. So something to think about. They play alone, don't have interest in playing with friends when typical children would be. They appear as if they don't hear. I actually had one parent that I started working with her child was diagnosed with a hearing impairment. But things just still weren't, there still are things they were thinking about. So she went on and had further assessments completed by a specialist, and they came up with the autism diagnosis. It really looked like he wasn't hearing. Ignoring, when he would hear his name called and ignoring. All those things that kind of look like there could be a hearing impairment that we look for in our young children. It really was the autism. So maybe not showing remorse or those emotions and those feelings. All those things can be not sympathizing, not having eye contact. So the three main areas that are usually affected when we have that autism diagnosis, again, is social interaction, communication, and then their behavior. Communication is a big one. It's not just, are they articulating, can we understand them? It's expressing themselves, it's receptive language, it is pragmatic speech, their pitch, tone, fluency, all those things are important pieces of their communication. It's going to affect their social and academic, functioning, that speech piece. So this is a big piece that we need to be looking at. And that social context of how they are with people, knowing what to say, when to say it, how to say it. Just how are they? They're just their beingness with other people. That's all part of that communication. We communicate in so many ways. Our body language speaks louder than words, and all those kinds of things. Facial expressions, all part of communication. So these are the three areas that are probably going to be affected, but they're going to be very different in every child. Again, once you've met one child with autism, you've only met one child with autism, because they all are going to have the characteristics in varying degrees. Social interaction. Okay, so we're going to look at this. This is important. I mean, we all need to belong, right? I mean, that's one of the human needs. We all need to belong. And the more social skills they have, the more likely it is that they are going to have a group to belong with or feel they belong with someone. So, important piece. They may prefer to be alone. That's one of the characteristics that we're going to see. And they don't want that hugging, any body types of contact typically. No eye contact. How are they speaking? Is it too loud or too long? So interacting, initiating conversations, interpreting those facial expressions, all are part of that issue. Understanding personal space. How close can I be standing to someone? How their actions affect others. That cause and effect thing, not only with test taking, but how what they're doing, how is that affecting someone else in a social perspective? So learning that. Jokes, sarcasm, they're not going to get that. They're very literal. If you say, that's really cool, what are they going to think? Do I want to touch it and see how cool it is? One student, I don't know if he was arrested, he got stopped by the police, and the police said, "You want to waive your rights?" Well, what do you think he did? Yes! Do you think the police officer liked that? No! No, so they could get in more trouble. And so there has been a lot of training with our law enforcement agencies in understanding autism. And some children actually carry cards with them, so that they can share that information. I think there's so much training going out there on how to approach people and how they can de-escalate or escalate situations. Very an important piece. I had an experience with a police officer with someone that had issues, and he was amazing. Very calm, very calm. He did not escalate the situation at all. That could have been had he not understood the disability. So, important pieces. So role-playing, social stories, there are a lot of different things that we can do to help support the children with their social skills. Actually, in different etiquette, like say even going to the bathroom. I have 5 sons. I never thought once about having to teach them where to go in a public men's restroom. That whole urinal thing, I never dawned on me. But I guess it was kind of just natural and normal. Like, if there's somebody already in there, you don't go stand right next to them. You stand somewhere else. Never would have thought about it. And my boys would probably say, well, I don't know, you just know. But our kids with autism don't just know. They need to be systematically taught these social skills, and that's just one example of needing to be systematically taught things that might be common sense to someone else. We can't assume, because that can get us in big trouble. They may not know, and we need to specifically teach that. Actually, there's an app now that you can download that you can practice that skill. Okay, there's somebody here at this one. Now where do you stand? Okay, there's 2 people. Now where do you stand? Just a little game of teaching it. Yes, there's probably an app for everything. I know. Well, yes, that's true. A lot of things we don't think about. It's common sense for us, but it is more stuff. It's more to think about, more to address. We're talking about that. I know you have younger children, but as they're older and, their relationships with the opposite sex also, and understanding, at your age, the social skills building is a little easier, but by the as they're leaving you, they're developing those stronger friendships, which the social skills are going to take a huge step at that point in developing, more lasting, long-term, more intimate relationships, getting best friends rather than groups of friends, which can be more challenging for them. But when the social skill building starts at your level, it makes it much easier to build on when they're older, because they've already got some foundational skills mastered, and they can just go up from there. Social interaction, IEP goals. So, if in the public schools, they'd be looking at making this part of their IEP. Because what I like about IDEA, that law, is that the process is a very good process. The rules are very good. The reasons they are there are because the research has been done to show this is what works. So whether it's a rule or a law, it's something that works for kids. We have our academics that we teach, and the law says, we must provide a free, appropriate public education. And it talks about academic skills, and it talks about functional skills. Because why do kids go to school? What's the purpose of going to school K through 12? What's that? For the social academic things?
I should say, so you're an integral part of your community, and you can be a good citizen and know how to interact.
Yes, yes. Would you like a chocolate peppermint or the regular? Okay.
Actually, I'll just go for a peppermint.
Okay, all right. Because, yes, They are being prepared to be good citizens, to be independent, productive workers in society. And what does it take for that to happen? It takes a lot of things. They need their academics, of course, to be successful employees or employers out there. But they also need the social skills. And so that's why that functional piece was added to that law, because the realization, employers are saying, I need someone that's going to show up. I mean, I can teach what they need to do here, but I want them to have those other skills also. And so those things are really important if we want them to be productive members of society out there. So we're looking at the social skill piece with that. So as you're receiving IEPs, if you have students coming to your building, you'll be receiving the IEPs from that home district. If you have a child with those social needs, there should be a goal there addressing those social needs, those social skills. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those things. Strategies for teaching those social skills. We want to remember, when you do academics, if you're teaching a new skill, sometimes you're probably doing hand over hand to help someone because they don't have that skill. We do that with academics, but we also can do that with that social skill building too. It can be that hand over hand teaching that particular skill. Some of the things that you may need to look at, because I guess it can be overwhelming. You think, well, where do I start? I'm not quite sure. I know things aren't right. But being able to see, okay, let's have a checklist of, can he do this, 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 and this? Or what's getting in the way of what we're seeing, the issue? What is the issue? Is it developing relationships? Is it initiating conversations? Let's break those things down and see what we need to start teaching and looking at. Is it turn taking? Is it being okay when I don't get something right? I'm okay with when I fail at something. Is it waiting? Is it responding to teasing, requesting a break, knowing how to request a break, expressing their feelings, knowing their feelings and being able to express that, dealing with their anger, confusion and frustration, accepting that there are limits and boundaries, complaining about something, or being able to join in to a conversation or an activity. All of those, asking for help. Looking appropriate, like refusing or apologizing for something. All those kinds of things are looking at, how those are all important work skill pieces for in their future, but also for their developing their relationships with their peers and being involved and a part of. So some of the strategies for teaching some of these things. Anybody watch I Love Lucy shows, the old I Love Lucy shows? What is what is so unique about her? What? All those facial expressions that she's sharing. You can turn the volume down on that and you can learn a lot about communication. That's entertaining itself. You don't need to hear anything about Lucy. I know you're too young for it, but they have reruns. Yeah, what is she on a stage? Do you get her anywhere here? What's that?
TCN.
Okay. All right. Yes, you can learn a lot by watching I Love Lucy and those facial expressions and body language that she is sharing. Power cards. Power cards, typically if they are focused on one particular person or object, you can use a power card with that way. One child, he loved Regis Philbin. He loved Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He that was his, his focus. So they had a picture, a real picture of Regis in the corner of this power card, and then they had the different steps of something that they wanted to teach.